and some weed eating and just spring sprucing our properties. They look great. We just want to look greater, okay? So that's next week on the 13th. I'm also reminding you, I said this in the newsletter, that there's a called meeting next Sunday on the 14th at 4 p.m. This is for members only, and we'll talk about that in a little bit more in detail in just a moment. On the 20th, you got notice about a yard sale. I'm giving you the heads up on this. It's a Saturday the 20th, and it's a great idea. Adriana Shear is our coordinator, and she's the one who had the idea in any case. And it's just simply bringing stuff on 98, we can put out some tables or put out a sheet, or you can just put stuff. If you just want to clean your house and get rid of some stuff, and 98 is the best spot. We've got a great spot for it. Then clean out, toss. I'm a tosser, so clean out your stuff. And on the 20th, 21st, it's about time to begin meeting on VBS. So I'm just priming the pump there. Vacation Bible School this summer. So I'm looking to have the same team members come back, hopefully, into places of ministry. And if you've not participated in Vacation Bible School, it is a super fun week with pre-K 3 through 5th grade. So we're about to get that off the ground. You do not have to be a member to participate, to actually help. But if you're going to do some of the primary areas of teaching and instruction, yeah, you got to be a member. But otherwise, we've got something for everyone to experience. Okay? So just a couple announcements there. There's a women's Bible study that's beginning this Tuesday, 9:30, on the book of Ruth. Okay? The book of Ruth. And that's interesting enough because I want to turn to my own self to the book of Ruth. You don't need to turn there. I'm just going to read it to you this morning, just a couple verses to kind of just introduce our conversation. There's also 5 tickets that are still available for the women's conference in Pensacola. So if you have not got a ticket yet and you want, the 5 tickets are available. Debbie is here to my left and Margaret is here to my right. You just see them right away and say, I want one of those tickets. They're $54. And so we've got 10 tickets, so 5 are already purchased. We just have 5 more. We want to sell those. This morning, I'm going to go off the tracks a little bit. There is a track, so I'm not going off the tracks. I'm going on to another track a little bit. Normally, we'd be in our study of Hebrews, but I want to take time today to do kind of a presentation to give you some things to think about, particularly members, but I'm happy for our guests to sit in and kind of listen to a little bit of what's happening in the life of our church and perhaps what may be ahead of us. In the past several weeks, we have had an ongoing discussion with my deacons and pastor together, along with Sunrise City Church, about their future. And we're going to talk about this in a moment. I have a proposal that I want some slides that I want to show you, and so I'll try to give you a cue, and we'll move from one slide to the next. Go ahead with the slide, then the next slide, and the next one. There we go. Okay? Several months ago, really back in November, the church voted to actually not to renew a property use agreement for Sunrise City Church. Sunrise City Church meets in the 2-story building to our right, your right, my left. They are a Southern Baptist church plant that actually came to live with us during COVID. They were actually in a school that they were leasing behind the steakhouse over there. They've been there for about 7 years, and they were displaced, and we were sitting here empty for 12 weeks. We had nothing going on, and they needed a place to do basically their broadcast, which is what we were all doing for 12 weeks. And so they came to be a part and basically come and occupy the second floor, the first and second floor of our fellowship hall. We then entered into a use agreement for them that would allow them to use that particular building, and they would actually share in the expenses of the church on utilities and the overall cost of what it takes to operate as a church. They have been with us now for 4 years. In November, we voted not to renew the current use agreement, and they would ultimately have to find a new location. Sunrise City, last week, Sunrise City had 190 in Easter service. They had 41 children. We had 117 with 12 kids. It was a great Sunday. It felt good, and we're excited. But both of these churches restarted coming out of COVID with about 40 people. That first Sunday coming out of COVID, they had about 40 over there, and we had about 40 here. And God's been growing these churches, our churches, together essentially to where now there's almost between 200 to 250 persons on our campus using our lots and keeping the buildings in place. But we voted together not to renew that because we really wanted to get our fellowship hall back. The fellowship hall, which is the downstairs area, we had to kind of work with the master calendar with them to try to be sure we could get it whenever we wanted to. We felt like we really had grown to the point where we needed to have that for the fellowships that we enjoy. So we ultimately sent them a message in November, we're not going to renew, okay? And ultimately giving them plenty of time to actually locate new property or a new place to go. The next slide, the current property use actually finishes on Thursday, June 6th, D-Day. The next slide. The next slide. The church was updated on Sunday, March the 3rd. That was a business meeting that Sunrise had yet to secure a new location. They had been working with three realtors. They actually had been working the entire time, the 4 years, with 2 realtors, and have not been able to secure commercial property that would be reasonable and or actually functionable for their use. And if you're familiar with the property values in our area and the way things work commercially, commercial property is crazy, particularly for leasing and definitely if you want to purchase it. So they were not able to or did not find what they were looking for. In March, they came to us to say, hey, we haven't found anything. When we get to the end of March, we would be very interested if there was any other kind of agreement we could get to that would let us just kind of stay a little bit longer, or at least until we can really help you find a place. Well, we presented that in business meeting, and that's where it stayed. But essentially following that meeting, the next 3 Tuesday nights, we met with Sunrise City with Pastor David and Pastor Chris in the evenings to actually begin to pray about. And I say that we prayed. The first meeting was kind of them explaining, we've done everything we can. We do not know exactly where the Lord wants us to be situated, but we are open to just whatever God will provide. And where are you guys? What do you think? Well, in that conversation, became an idea surfaced about a potential proposal, which I'm going to talk about a little bit today. But the second time we met, we did nothing but pray, just seeking the Lord together. Why? Because we already had a decision on the table to not renew their use agreement. But here we were talking with them about their particular needs, talking about what our needs were as a church. And by the third meeting, by the third Tuesday, a unique proposal surfaced. This proposal that I'm going to present to you today has been presented to the deacons themselves, and they are essentially in agreement concerning presenting it to you. No votes have been cast, okay? No votes have been cast for this. It's just they in their mind say, this is the health of the church, this is the operation of the church. Is this going to be a good thing, or is it not going to be a good thing? And they have given their support for this proposal. Well, yesterday, I got to do the same proposal to the council. There were 19 members of our church council, which are our church leaders. They actually listened to the proposal as well, and we were 17-2 in favor of sending this proposal to you for your review and your vote. Again, no votes have been cast. It's just working through the process that we always use of going through the deacons as far as the health of the church, through the council with respect to who's going to be impacted, and then ultimately if it's a global effect to you as a church. Okay, so 3 Tuesday nights we prayed together and we came together on this particular proposal. All right, the slide please. Obviously, in your mind there are many questions already about Sunrise City and about what it means to actually serve in the same way. We are already on essentially holy ground. 2 churches do not normally coexist on the same property. That's not a normal thing unless you're Seventh-day Adventist. And then you operate on Saturday totally, and then you find an evangelical church that operates on Sunday. That's about the only way you'll find 2 churches operating on the same property at the same time. You definitely wouldn't say have worship services at the same time. That's not a good idea. It's going to hurt both churches. But I have to say, we both started at 42 Now they are averaging about 110, 115, and we're averaging 86. So it has not hurt us. It has not inhibited us in our growth. Both of these churches have been growing together. But I want to walk through this, and then I'll respond to some questions that the council had, which I suspect you might have as well on this. So let's walk through this kind of quickly. The next slide. Both churches have a common desire to reach Mary Esther and Fort Walton Beach with the gospel, and they both are Southern Baptist churches. We are in the same actual association of 23 churches. We're part of 2,300 churches that make up Southern Baptist churches in Florida. We're part of 44,000 churches that make up the Southern Baptist Convention throughout our country, okay? We are Southern Baptists. It means we agree with the Baptist Faith and Message 2000. We are in agreement theologically. We are in agreement as far as our mission to share the gospel, and we have both been doing that in a variety of ways as we go forward. Secondly, I need to do beep. I don't know if I need to do a beep. Both churches have prayed for the Lord to show Sunrise City where to situate next with no results. We have prayed, and many of you have given options, and we have options to them. They have 3 realtors. We have been praying about trying to help them find a location. They have approached 3 other churches that could use some assistance, maybe not just to serve together, but just operate properties that are very, very large, that have very, very small congregations. Those properties would have benefited by perhaps welcoming Sunrise City just financially. They chose not to do that. So they have knocked on the door of some churches that might even be in need and be open, and they have received a no answer. Next, both churches have a need that the other church is able to meet for the sake of continued outreach. I opened the book of Ruth for a second because I wanted just to see something in the book of Ruth. The book of Ruth is a very small book of the Bible. It's about a person her name is Ruth. She is not part of Israel. She is not a Jew. She is an outsider, okay? She isn't a Moabite, okay? She is not somebody who is a worshiper of God, Yahweh, the true and the living God. She worships Chemosh. Chemosh is a terrible god that basically they fire up the hands of this god, and perhaps in their worst possible days, they would actually offer infants in this heated hands of this god in sacrifice, okay? She is an idol worshiper, okay? I'm not saying she's bad. I'm just saying she's not in the circle of God's things, okay? How does she get to be a book of the Bible? Well, there's a couple of Israel who have 2 daughters, or who have 2 sons. And the famine hits in Israel, and they say to themselves, we can't make it here. We need to go to another country. It's almost like they were saying we need to trust somebody else as God. They go to Moab, and the man, against all the Israelite directions, he gives his daughters to marry Moabite women. Okay, that was a no-no, a big no-no. You were only supposed to marry inside the Israelite people. He gives his sons to marry daughters. Sometime later, we don't know why, the husband dies and the sons die. The widow is now left by herself except for her daughters-in-law, and she says to her daughters-in-law, I got nothing. I got nothing left. I got no trade. I've got nothing. I'm here in Moab. You 2 stay here, find some new husbands. I'm going back. I've got nothing else to give you. This is a totally broken play. And the one daughter-in-law says, okay, I'll stay. Ruth says, no, you are my mother-in-law. I'm going to stick with you. And not only am I going to stick with you, but I'm going back to the land that you came from, and your God's going to be my God. I'm going to make a change, okay? She goes back, okay? She goes back and actually lives with her mother-in-law, Naomi is her name, so they can survive because Naomi's older. Ruth says, I got to go out and find some food. We don't have any food. Ruth goes out, and she actually stumbles into a field. And the way the Israelite law was written, in your fields, you were not supposed to harvest the corner of your fields. That's where the poor people could go find food anytime they wanted. They could go to the corner of everybody's field and find that a corner of that field had not been harvested. She picks a particular field and goes out and harvests. Oh, amazing. She ends up in the field of a relative of Naomi's. The law itself said ultimately if an individual is widowed, then it's basically the individuals who are related who are responsible to pick up the slack. And one of those roles has to do with kinsman redeemer. It means you marry the widow. You agree to marry the widow and actually raise up offspring in the name of the deceased husband. Just so happens that Boaz, the owner of that field, is a kinsman redeemer. And the end of the story is ultimately Boaz secures Ruth as his bride, and she has a child. The child's name is Obed. And Obed becomes the grandfather of King David, who was the greatest Israelite king of all times. Okay, so can you say broken play? God's in charge. God can give glory and bring glory however he will on circumstances sometimes that we just cannot see exactly what he's doing. And frankly, it's going to take hindsight sometimes to see. I'm just simply stirring your minds a bit to say there's a lot that's been going on in the last bunch of years that ultimately has brought our two churches together to serve simultaneously. What I'm presenting today is an opportunity to move a little bit closer together. We're not talking about uniting or merging. We're talking about proximity ministering in a much closer way. So let me walk through that together quickly. Here's what it looks like. Both churches have a need that the other church is able to meet for the sake of continued outreach. What are these needs? Next slide, please. What are these major needs and how might each church choose to meet them? Next slide. Sunrise's need is space. They need space in which they can conduct their Sunday morning worship, and then they need space in which they can operate for Wednesday nights and continue to operate an office, which is what they do in the second story of the Plot Fellowship Hall. How could First Baptist Church possibly meet that need? Next slide. Allow Sunrise City to hold Sunday worship in our sanctuary and also have and make use of the second floor Plot Hall. We would regain use of the bottom floor Plot Hall fully with our activities and our social events and our eating, but they would continue to be on second floor, but they would operate their service in our very sanctuary here and provide a morning worship service. What does First Baptist Church need? Next slide, please. Or actually, here's the prospective schedule. Here's what it might look like. 9:30 a.m. sunrise worship. 9:45 would be our small groups. So it'd be a little bit later in the day that our church actually would operate. And then 11 o'clock, First Baptist Church worship would happen. So 2 churches, 2 services. In the middle, they do not have small groups or Sunday school, but we do. Our Sunday school, our small groups would meet at 9:45. Next slide. What's FBC's need? Well, we need music leadership, music ministry rehearsals on Wednesday night, and we need leadership service on Sundays. So how could Sunrise actually assist in that? Well, here's how they're willing to help. This is kind of what was kind of unique. Slide, please. The worship ministry leadership would be provided by Sunrise City as led by Chris Tezanar. Chris Tezanar is their actual worship leader over there. Many of you have met Chris. Chris is a phenomenal 5-star worship leader. He loves the Lord, loves the scriptures, has a great voice, understands all the technology that we use. In fact, they've been using it probably for much longer than we. But he would begin to operate to provide, leading our team here and then leading their team in the services. So it's not about blending teams. Our team would be led by Chris, and then Chris would lead Sunrise City's team of worshipers as well. But he's that good, he's that equipped, he's that skilled, he has spiritual gifts, and he is also a pastor as well. So he would actually lead our worship services. Next slide. Significant details with relation to this property use agreement having to do with the sanctuary and the second floor. Here's some significant details. First, there's no property use payment. We've been receiving a donation from them to actually provide for their use and provide for utilities and a variety of things. We would not be asking them to make any payments at all on that with respect to utilities or the cost or use of the facilities. And then the second point, if you would, there's no salary for Chris. Essentially, to pay Chris as an interim to do worship leading is going to be probably between $25,000 and $30,000. That essentially $25,000 and $30,000 is ultimately what they pay to actually keep the buildings, the utilities paid, and actually the lease to use the properties that we have available to them. So essentially, it becomes a wash that he's able to actually lead, provide primary leadership, which we need, and then they would have property to conduct their services that they need. Number 3, it is a one-year agreement. It is not an open-ended agreement as though something is in place and it cannot be changed. It'll be reevaluated and tweaked as it needs to be, as it has been. But it is a one-year agreement. It has a start, it has a finish, and ultimately can be discerned as to whether or not this is mutually beneficial, this arrangement for us, or whether really it has not been beneficial. Number 4, Sunrise continues to search for a location. Their process of continuing to look for a location continues, and if we so wish as a church, our particular search, we haven't discussed this, we will do so in June to actually set up a search committee and actually search for our new worship minister of music for our church in and of itself. So they will continue to be searching for property, and we perhaps as a church will be continuing to search for a minister of music for our long-term usage that well. Okay? Next slide. The timeline for approval is essentially this. The council review happened yesterday. Of course, deacons have given their thumbs up as far as the health of the church and the proposal. I presented the same proposal to them. Church approval would be next Sunday night at 4 o'clock. I'm providing the opportunity for you to hear it and think about it, pray about it for a week. And at the very back of the church on the table that actually is underneath the TV in the lobby is a copy of the agreement itself. So please walk out and review that draft before you leave today. I gave the committee an opportunity to actually fill out some cards that had questions on it. And so yesterday they wrote down all the questions they could think of anonymously to just say, hey, I hear what you're saying, but here's some questions I've got about this arrangement. So I want to answer some of these, respond to some of these, and because they may be some of the questions that you have. If I answer a question that you have, or I don't answer a question that you have, I'm going to remain, of course, at the front. You can find me afterwards, and we'll talk about that if you'd like. But let me walk through several of these questions. First of all, parking. How will Sunrise continue to use? Will Sunrise continue to park on 98 in the same way that they do now? And we tend to park in this parking lot here. Yes. Now, we say that because they've got, like I say, 100 people that attend. We've got almost 100. So these two parking lots, there's about 170 parking spaces out there. So we're actually going to probably need a little bit of each other's, and we're going to love each other through that. So we're not going to have like stickers and passes on your windshield that say you can park here or not, okay? We're just going to love each other like we've been doing, and parking is available however you want to park. All right, let's go to another one. How about this? Do they do ministry on Wednesday nights? Yes, but they only do it in their particular facilities over in Plott Hall. So again, their actual operations don't change as far as the Wednesday night or midweek stuff. Their only change is that they would do their worship service here. Our schedule would remain the same during the week and during Sunday, except that we would meet later on Sunday morning, 9:45 for small groups and 11. Would the worship team have to come early to rehearsal? Yes. He would be leading rehearsals for both worship teams on Sunday morning. Okay? Now he's leading rehearsals and prepping 2 sets, 2 teams, Wednesday night rehearsal and also Sunday morning rehearsal. Okay? Let me see. Payment for Chris. That was a question I want to be sure. The reason Chris is not being paid is because we're doing an exchange. They're not actually covering utilities any longer or rental usage or property usage. We're agreeing to actually bring that to an even state so that he serves as our worship leader, interim worship leader, and we actually give them the freedom from having to actually make that payment. How do we keep the tithes and offerings separate? This is very important to us, okay? We give by our plates. We give plates and receive plate offerings and or the black box in the back. All of their offering is taken digitally. Everything, they have little kiosks that they put, and people come in, and they go to the kiosk, and they put their credit card up, and they drop their money electronically. They do not do plates, okay? So we're not going to be intermingling funds. We are going to be taking an offering. They receive an offering, but it just looks differently than it does for ours. But again, there's no blending of finances is the issue. Will the children's Sunday schools be combined? No. We're not combining any other ministries. We're not combining any ministries at all other than our geography. Our kids' church remains the same. Their kids' church remains the same. Their kids' church operates over in the second story of the Plot Fellowship Hall. We have our kids exit into our children's wing. So there is no blending of youth ministry. There's no blending of kids ministry. There's no blending of ministries at this time. That would be called a merge. That is a very, very huge, big step we're not ready for, they're not ready for. We're just looking to actually coexist and provide for the needs that they have with respect to space. Let me see what else we have here. This one has to do with entrance and exits. How are we going to enter and exit? A lot of details. You enter through the front door, for the most part. They would be exiting they would have the first service. They would enter from the front door, have their service, and they would exit through the side door. We all would be actually coming through that door upon the completion of their service at 10:45, really 10:30, 10:45. You would be coming in through the front door as they will be exiting the back door, okay? So logistics are going to have to be mapped out. We're already thinking about that to be sure it's smooth. But we're not afraid of you meeting them, okay? And we're not afraid of them meeting you, okay? That's the point. We're going to be in heaven with these people forever, okay? So I understand there's a lot of humanness. Like I say, we just cannot be ourselves in this work. We must be Christ. We must be Spirit-filled. We must love each other. We must love our brothers and sisters in Christ. That's the only way this works, is that we actually extend grace to each other. And I'm not just saying it's all on us. I'm saying it's on them too, to actually feel the welcome that we're providing, but also minister and grow together, okay? A couple others, one more perhaps. Let's go with this one. I would say this, the last question had to do with their use of the fellowship hall. They do not have use of the fellowship hall. It's not part of the agreement, but if they did have a particular use for an event that they have, then yes, then they would be talking with me. I'm the primary contact between the pastors for using the fellowship hall. And by the way, on the fellowship hall, which we're going to enjoy and have our celebrations, we will be sitting on their chairs. Okay? So you understand how we are helping each other out here. We're sitting on their chairs. We're working together. We have had a good relationship with them. This proposal I'm presenting today would have no chance of ever seeing daylight, but we have had 4 years of relational experience with them. What I'm proposing to you has not been done in Okaloosa County. What I'm proposing we do as a church, it's not happening in Florida. Okay? I've talked with other people. There are not places where two churches are meeting together simultaneous like this on a Sunday morning. Okay? We don't know all that's going to take place. We just feel God is leading us to present this to you and to move forward with this together. Is it going to feel uncomfortable? Is it going to be a little bit of a change? Yes, it will. But for the sake of the gospel, for the sake of mission and the actual encouragement I think that you can be to them and they can be to us, it's going to provide an opportunity for both churches to grow. So that's all the questions I have. My only question for you is, will you pray about this? Will you take time, not just say it, but will you take time to pray over it, okay? I understand it's a little bit to process at this point, but will you pray about it? I'm going to put the information in the, essentially in the newsletter that'll come out. If you're not getting the newsletter and you want that, be sure you tell me about that. But again, the information as far as the agreement is on the back table. I hope you will actually take a copy of that, review it, pray over it. Let's just see what God's doing, and ultimately we will bring it to a vote next Sunday night at 4 o'clock. If we choose to move forward with it, here's what it might look like, okay? Next slide. We would have a unified service on May the 19th. That means both churches would be meeting together on a Sunday morning. All the pastors would be here. We would have a shared worship time and a message time together on May the 19th. We would essentially just be sure we've got plenty of chairs for what would almost be 200 that would join us here in worship. Then the new Sunday schedule would begin on June the 2nd. Sunday, June the 2nd, we would begin the new schedule of 9:30 and 11, and the schedule for small groups at 9:45. And that would be essentially, the clock would be ticking for the year agreement from there. So I hope you're thinking about it. I know some of you, this is very frightening and very challenging. Others of you, it's exciting, and you may be afraid to actually be excited about it. That's okay. This is all very, very new. But let me say this to you. As your pastor, as your shepherd, it is my responsibility under God to do what I believe is in the best interest of this flock. I was not brought here to hurt you. I was not here to divide you or destroy you. I was brought to actually build health in you. Being imperfect, not everything that I have actually done has helped you. Not everything has been helpful. This particular process has taken time with my deacons together, with your deacons together, to spend time to pray over it, to present it through the stages where all of us can get an opportunity to pray over it, think about it. I pray that you'll give time and attention to this. In my perspective, the reason a lot of churches are not doing what we're doing simply is they are afraid to. As many as 25% of churches in the Southern Baptist Convention are probably under 50 members. It means we've got a lot of churches that are very, very small, and perhaps they will continue to grow smaller. It would benefit them to actually think about how they could minister, perhaps even in the same facilities. Maybe not merger, but even to grow together and encourage one another. This is a great opportunity, I believe, to think much further ahead, to actually aid a church plant. Here's where I was on this. 1 John says, if you see a brother or sister in need, and you have by you what they need, and you do not provide for what they need, how can you say the love of God abides in you? I didn't write that. God did. Now, you can say it sounds like arm twisting. No, I'm simply saying it's very spiritual. What we're doing here is very, very spiritual. It's a very pivotal moment for the life of our fellowship. Again, it's not merger. I cannot disagree. We are moving closer together, and if we actually like and love each other over time, right now we don't, because we don't know each other. I'm saying we don't know each other. They haven't ministered around our bare feet, and we haven't ministered around theirs. Okay? So realistically, I'm not naive about all the different human stuff that can happen when a bunch of human Christians get together. okay? We all know this. Stuff can happen. But it's going to take a commitment together to say, you know, because of the mission, because we share Christ in common, yeah, we're willing to do this for a year. We're willing to actually give it for a year. Let's see if God's in it. If they find a new place to actually buy or sell or lease and they move out, well, then they do that. If we actually find somebody to lead worship in the future of the year, well, then we'll renegotiate ultimately what that looks like for them financially to use the facilities. All I'm saying is we're going to be as upfront and as clear as we possibly can be. I just pray you'll give time to it and plan to not just pray over it, but I hope you will attend next Sunday night at 4 o'clock, as members are expected to do. Part of what it means to be a member is to participate in the life of your church. I hope you'll be here at 4 o'clock. This message is being recorded right now. It'll be available on Facebook. So if you know somebody who did not actually see the presentation and you want to be sure they do see the presentation, then you can say, hey, go to Facebook, check out the presentation by Pastor Jonathan. You need to see it, pray over it, and participate in the life of our church going forward. Okay? That's where we are. I'm not going to actually open the floor for questions at this point. I will stay here at the end. I want the worship team to come close our service with a beautiful song that we're already familiar with and we love and